about the rewards God gives to his faithful people. We don't usually think of it in terms of rest. I could be cynical and say we don't work hard enough to do that, but that would be pure cynicism and not true. But it means far more than just cessation from labor.
What is the word that's used in the Greek?
Sabbath.
Sabbath, which is like sabbatical or
Yes.
Sabbath.
Yes, it's the word Sabbath, which means seventh, the seventh, but by metonymy it came to mean rest, because God rested. Now, in the Genesis passage where it says God rested, the words say that God rested from all his works. You have to really understand that, because if God totally ceased everything he was doing, so would we. But there, in the context it is, he stopped creating the creation process and started something else. I made a play on that in my book, and I think basically I had a very biblical perspective on it. But I got to thinking, what is it? Let's first think biblically and then personally. Biblically, what can you think of? Let's take the Apostle Paul. What would he want to rest from?
The law.
What?
The law. The law. Control.
Steve?
The war.
What?
The war.
Okay. Yes. The war. What war, Steve?
The war between the spirit and the flesh.
I know where you're coming from. I think he would put it a little different.
Against principalities.
Yes. He said our warfare is not against other people. It's against principalities and powers in the heavenly places, the demonic forces. The war, just in our usual terminology, the war between good and evil. We as believers are involved in that war, like it or not. You could extrapolate some of the things that Max said this morning in terms of the war between good and evil. That war is incessant. I can really appreciate that as I've gotten older. It seems like I'm not one of these people that thinks this is the worst period of time that's ever been. It's not. But everything that you experience in the general flow of daily life, you can see good and evil in battle. And there's nothing more tiring. My wife and I listened to a book about the battle for Okinawa in World War II. And one of the things that the man emphasized was how very tired the American and the Japanese soldiers, for that matter. It went on for 60-some days of combat. I had an uncle that was in a World War II 104th Division. He was 38 years old and was originally classified 4F for physical condition. They were told that they would not be put into frontline battle, they'd be backline troops. They were rushed across just as Patton broke through the Falaise Gap and started his run across northwestern France. They were in the front lines 119 straight days. They hold the record of all Americans. So that's kind of symbol of this battle of good and evil. That's one. Paul said, I have fought the fight. You remember? I have, what else?
Run the race.
Run the race. Did you see some of the runners in the Olympics?
One who finished with a broken tibia.
Yes, that was fabulous. But our friend Usain Bolt, who is the fastest man in the world, I'll grant him that. He didn't even, one thing that amazes me about some of those runners, in the 100-meter dash, they don't breathe from start to finish.
You don't have time to breathe.
Exactly right. And you don't need to breathe in 9.68 seconds or whatever it is. Many runners in the 200-meter do not breathe. But some of them are gasping like fish for air. Run the course. Okay, we can rest from that. Can you think of anything else? What about don't grow weary in well-doing? Okay. I can identify with all of those, can you? Now, think just your personal. If you don't want to respond, it's okay, but I just like to kind of have a sampling. Personally, I would like to rest from thinking. Mary.
I'd like Mary to rest
I see some of you, God gave me a good mind, but I feel like Tevye sometimes. You know what Tevye's famous saying?
Bless somebody else for a while.
Yes. Would you choose somebody else for a while? He said, I know we're the chosen people, but would you mind choosing somebody else for a while?
That's like the cartoon with the guy with a silly grin on his face. He says, sometimes I sits and thinks, and sometimes I just sits.
Yeah. I can't do that. That's part of being ADD. But anybody want to share their own? You might be revealing more about yourself than you want to, but
I think my rest from thinking, my thinking is probably not like your thinking, because I'm smart. My thinking is probably tied into control.
Yep.
That I want to control if I'm teaching class or if I'm visiting neighbors, grandchildren, my children, the world, you know, if they would just listen to me, you know. So my mind just is kind of controlled. But I'm learning, you know what? As you get older, I never had control anyway. So to release that and rest is getting easier, and trust. Trust, I think, has to replace
okay.
my thinking.
Anybody
I
else?
keep worrying.
Steve? Go ahead.
Charles, a couple of weeks ago, actually, I sent my book off to the publisher. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I don't have to work. That's rest.
You look rested.
Okay. Steve, you'll,
Well, I go back to this, what I said earlier, and from my point of view, and that's just my point of view, the conflict, the war between the spirit and the flesh covers all of that.
yeah, okay.
And that's a struggle that I'm looking forward to just being done with.
I think maybe we have a little more in-depth and more personalized view of what the writer of Hebrews means by the rest of God.
I was just gonna add, with what Laramie said, the control that, I think that might be part of just being a woman, I'm not sure, and being responsible for family and so on, but mine is the burden of people that I love that I think are not as dedicated to Christ, or I want them to be more involved and show more of the fruits of the Spirit in their life or whatever, and it just burdens me. And that is absolutely something you cannot control, right? I mean, you can't
Yeah.
control it in the other person, and it just weighs on me.
Okay. I wanted to do that, as I said, to give a little more breadth to the way that the writer of Hebrews uses the term rest, and a little more personal. And I don't know about you, I think I hear the response that that's been accomplished, and I appreciate that. Okay, we are ready to start the 7th verse of the 5th chapter of Hebrews.